The Block Brothers' Quest. Jackson, who was 7, and his little brother Ruben, who was 4, loved playing Minecraft more than anything. One rainy afternoon, they were building a giant castle when the screen of their computer began to glow with a strange, swirling purple light. "Whoa, what's happening?" Ruben whispered, grabbing onto Jackson's sleeve. The purple light pulsed, and a low humming sound filled the room. It felt like the whole world was vibrating. Before Jackson could answer, the light rushed forward and swallowed them whole. They felt a dizzying, tumbling sensation, like being pulled through a straw. Everything was a swirl of purple and black. They landed with a soft thump on something green and blocky. When they opened their eyes, they weren't in their room anymore. They were standing under a square, blocky sun, surrounded by giant, pixelated trees. "Jackson," Ruben said, his voice tiny, "I think we're in Minecraft." Jackson looked at his own hands. They were square. He looked at Ruben. He was blocky too. It was true. They were inside the game. Suddenly, a low groan echoed from behind a tree. "A zombie! Quick, this way!" Jackson yelled. He grabbed Ruben's hand and they ran. They didn't know where they were going, they just knew they had to get away from the groaning monster. They found a small cave and huddled inside as the sun began to set. "How do we get home?" Ruben asked, his lip trembling. Jackson hugged him tight. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'll figure it out. I promise." The next morning, a villager with a long, blocky nose found them in the cave. "Trapped, are you?" he mumbled. "There is a way home, but it is a path of great danger. You must prove your courage." Ruben peeked out from behind Jackson's legs. The villager continued, "You must defeat the fiery blaze god of the Nether. Only then will the path to the second challenge reveal itself." The villager showed them how to craft tools and gather resources. Jackson crafted a stone sword, and Ruben helped gather wood and stone. They were a team. To reach the Nether, they needed obsidian. Jackson remembered from the game that you make it with water and lava. He carefully guided a stream of water onto a pool of bubbling lava. Hiss! A block of shiny black obsidian appeared. It took a long time, but they gathered enough obsidian to build a portal frame. Jackson nervously struck it with his flint and steel. The frame filled with the same swirling purple energy that had brought them here. "Ready?" Jackson asked. Ruben nodded bravely. They stepped through the portal and into the Nether. It was a scary place, full of red rock and rivers of lava. Ghasts shrieked in the sky above them. "Stay close," Jackson said, holding his sword tightly. They journeyed through the Nether until they saw it, a massive fortress floating over a lava sea. The blaze god must be in there, Jackson guessed. Inside the fortress, they found spinning, fiery monsters. "Blazes!" Jackson swung his sword, while Ruben cleverly threw snowballs they had gathered, which sizzled and hurt the fiery creatures. In the heart of the fortress, they found him. The blaze god was a giant blaze, with a crown of fire and eyes that burned like coals. It roared, and the whole fortress shook. "I have an idea," Jackson shouted. He dodged a fireball and started building a wall with cobblestone. "Ruben, keep throwing snowballs." Jackson finished the wall, leaving a small hole. He could peek through and swing his sword when the blaze god got close, but its fireballs couldn't hit them. It was working. With a final mighty swing, Jackson defeated the Blaze God. It exploded into a shower of light and dropped a single, dark star. As Jackson picked it up, a deep voice echoed, "You have proven your courage. Now, prove your strength. Defeat the Wither God." The Nether Star showed them the way back to the overworld. The voice had told them what to do. They needed to summon the Wither God, a creature of immense power. It was the final test. Jackson placed the last of the 3 wither skeleton skulls on the soul sand frame. There was a flash of light and a deafening explosion. The Wither God appeared, a terrifying 3-headed monster that made the sky grow dark. The Wither God fired exploding skulls from its heads. "Run and hide!" Jackson yelled, pulling Reuben behind a hill. "We need a new plan." Reuben saw a cave nearby. "In there!" he shouted. They ran inside. The Wither God couldn't fit. They could run in, shoot arrows or swing their swords, and then retreat to safety. For what felt like hours, the brothers worked together. Jackson would attack the Wither God, and when it turned its attention to him, Reuben would rush out and get a hit in. Slowly, they wore the great beast down. With one last, combined attack, the Wither God shattered into 1,000 pieces. Where it had been, a bright white portal now swirled. It was their way home. They looked at each other, smiled, and stepped through together, ready for their next adventure. A final lurch, Jackson and Reuben tumbled out of the swirling portal and landed on the soft carpet of their bedroom. The humming stopped. Jackson looked at his hands. They were normal again, with 5 fingers instead of a single blocky shape. "We're home," he breathed. Reuben jumped up and threw his arms around his big brother. "We did it!" He cheered. They looked at the computer screen. The game was still running, showing the blocky world they had just left. It looked so peaceful and quiet now, just a game again. The next few days felt strange. School and toys seemed boring after fighting monsters. Even playing Minecraft wasn't the same. Jackson and Reuben would just stand their characters on a hill, looking out at the blocky world and remembering their real adventure. One night, as they were about to log off, a message flickered on the screen. It wasn't a normal game chat. A blocky, familiar face appeared. It was the elder villager. "Heroes," his message read. "Your courage is needed once more. A great shadow looms in the end." Before they could even speak, the screen began to glow with the familiar, swirling purple light. It pulsed and hummed, reaching out to them. Jackson looked at Reuben and grinned. "Ready for another adventure?" Reuben grabbed his hand and nodded, his eyes shining. "Ready." They landed with a soft thump on blocky grass. The air smelled of pixelated flowers. They were back. The elder villager stood before them, his long, blocky nose twitching. "I knew you would come," he mumbled, placing a hand on Jackson's shoulder. Reuben stood close to his brother as the villager explained. "The Ender Dragon has awoken. Its power grows, threatening to plunge our world into eternal night. It lives in the end, a dimension between worlds. You are our only hope. To reach the end," the villager continued, "you must find a hidden stronghold and activate its portal. The portal requires 12 Eyes of Ender to open. These will also guide your path." He handed Jackson a single, strange-looking pearl with a glowing iris. The villager reminded them how to craft more Eyes of Ender. They needed Ender pearls, dropped by the spooky Enderman, and blaze powder, which they had from their last adventure. Reuben helped Jackson gather the materials at a crafting table. That night, they hunted for Endermen in the dark woods. A tall, shadowy creature teleported nearby with a soft V-whoop. "Remember, Reuben," Jackson whispered, "whatever you do, don't look it in the eyes." Jackson charged forward, swinging his sword at the Enderman's legs. The creature shrieked and tried to teleport, but Reuben was ready. He quickly placed a block of water at its feet, and the Enderman hissed, unable to vanish. It was perfect teamwork. After gathering enough pearls, they crafted 12 Eyes of Ender. Jackson took a deep breath and threw one into the sky. It hovered for a moment, then shot off towards the distant mountains. "That's the way," Jackson shouted, pointing. For days they followed the eyes, crossing deserts and oceans. At night, they would build a small dirt hut for safety. They sat by their campfire, sharing cooked chicken and telling stories, feeling like true adventurers. One afternoon, Jackson threw an eye, and instead of flying forward, it hovered and dropped straight down, sinking into the earth. "It's here," Reuben yelled excitedly. "The stronghold is right underneath us." They took out their shovels and began to dig. They broke through the dirt into a corridor of mossy stone bricks. It was the stronghold. The air was cold and musty. They lit torches and crept through the winding maze, their swords held ready for any surprise. At last, they found it. A large room with a strange, empty frame hanging over a pool of bubbling lava. This was the end portal. It was ancient and silent, waiting to be awoken. Jackson walked around the frame, carefully placing an Eye of Ender into each empty slot. With each placement, a low hum echoed in the room. Reuben watched, his heart thumping with anticipation for what was to come. As the 12th eye clicked into place, the portal roared to life, the empty frame filled with a swirling, starry blackness. It was beautiful and terrifying. "This is it," Jackson said, taking his brother's hand. "Together." They took a running leap and jumped into the portal. For a moment, they were floating in a sea of stars. Then, their feet hit solid ground. They stood on a floating island of pale, yellow stone under a black sky with no sun or moon. Tall obsidian towers rose up around them into the void. A monstrous screech echoed through the void. A huge, black shadow passed over them. They looked up to see a massive, blocky dragon with glowing purple eyes circling high above. The Ender Dragon. It was bigger and scarier than they had ever imagined. Jackson noticed glowing crystals on top of each obsidian tower. A beam of light connected them to the dragon. "Those crystals are healing it," he realized. "We have to destroy them." He drew his bow and took aim. While Jackson shot arrows, Reuben got to work. Using the cobblestone they brought, he quickly built narrow bridges across the void to the other towers. Jackson ran across them, dodging the dragon's attacks as he shattered crystal after crystal. With the last crystal destroyed, the dragon roared in fury and swooped down towards a large fountain structure in the center of the island. "It's weakened. Now's our chance." Jackson yelled. They both drew their swords and charged. The battle was long and fierce. They ducked and weaved, dodging fire and striking the great beast whenever they could. Finally, with one last, heroic, combined attack, the Ender Dragon let out a final cry and shattered into a million points of light. Where the dragon had fallen, a new portal appeared, shining with a gentle, warm light. It was their way home. They had done it. They had saved the overworld again. Jackson put his arm around Reuben's shoulders, and together the heroes stepped through the portal.